Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1481A, and today's date is January 25th, 2018, and the title of the episode is, Yesterday a Move Was Made to Collapse the Economy. It was just blocked. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been talking about the economy, two sides battling it out. Who's going to bring down the economy first? Who's going to control the narrative? And we already have seen the first attempt to take down the economy. And it wasn't by Trump. It looked like the central bank made their move and tried to do something. And we're going to see this play out over the next couple of months because we are at the end game here. And what we've been talking about, everything that we've been seeing, the indicators that we've been looking at, they're all pointing to the same exact thing. What's very interesting about all of this is that the central banks know this. The Bank of International Settlement, the IMF, most of these central banks, they've been talking about this for quite a while. Governments have been talking about this. Financial pundits have been talking about this. Everybody knows that there is a major problem. And the problem is the economy is built on one gigantic lie. That's it. And everyone knows it. And where we are today is the point of both sides battling it out, and who is going to control the narrative when they bring down the economy. Now, we have two sides, which is the Trump administration, the central bank, and the cabal. And the Trump administration, with many different patriots on his side, are trying to lessen the blow when the economy comes down to prepare us for this transition. The central bank, the cabal, they don't care. They don't care if it comes down extremely hard. They don't care if everyone loses everything and there are riots on the street. Actually, that's what they want. They actually do want this. So, we'll be talking about this in a little bit, but let's go over what is happening out in the economy. Remember, I'm not talking about the stock market. That is controlled by a computer system, algorithms. Trump has full control of that. He can make it go up. He can make it go down. It makes no difference at this point. And this is why we see the market going up and up and up. He's using this against the central bank, the cabal. He's doing it on purpose while he prepares everything. The real economy, on the other hand, well, it's completely falling apart. And you can just pump things up to a certain point and then things start to rapidly fall apart because you can't control what people do. Yes, you can manipulate the unemployment numbers. Yes, you can make the stock market go way up, the S&P 500 and everything else go up. You can make it look like the GDP numbers are fantastic. But what's going to happen is that the real economy, which is a people's economy, that breaks down. And there's nothing they can do to stop this. And they know this. They know they can't change course on what is happening in the people's economy. I mean, we talk about retail. Retail is completely falling apart. I mean, Nine West right now is planning for a bankruptcy filing. Now, what's very interesting is that there are thousands and thousands of stores that are going to be closing this year. As we know, Toys R Us is going to be closing about 182 stores. Sam's Club is going to be closing 63 stores. Walgreens is going to be closing 600 stores. Now, Starbucks, well, their revenue has disappointed. Their global sales growth has disappointed. Their Tijuana chain is not doing well, and they're going to be closing all 379 Tijuana locations this year. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to get your tea and to drink it right on the spot, You can't do that online. And when we start to see restaurants like Subway's close, it has nothing to do with online. We see the Ascena Retail Group. This is the parent company of Ann Taylor, Loft, Dress Barn, Lane Bryant, Justice. Well, they're closing up to 667 stores. Some 268 stores will close this year. Another 399 stores will close beyond that. The Gap announced that they're going to be closing 200 stores, including Banana Republic. The Children's Place is going to be closing 144 stores. Vitamin World is closing 124 stores. Gymboree closing 102 stores. Charming Charlie is closing 100 stores this year. More than 100,000 jobs are going to be lost from these closings. And this is coming from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And about 140 million square feet of vacant retail space is going to be just completely empty. So we could see what is happening here in the real people's economy. Now, the pump up of the real estate market, which made no sense whatsoever, and it was being driven by holding real estate off the market, pumping up the cities, doing whatever they possibly can to make it look like things were really going well. And all of a sudden, we saw existing home sales completely plunge. Now we see new home sales. They have plunged by 9.3% month on month after November. Also saw a gigantic revision of that number that came in. So they're already revising these numbers, and it's getting worse. And the downward revisions are huge. October went from 624,000 to 599,000. November from 733,000 to 689,000. And once again, these are the manipulated numbers. Now, purchases fell in all 4 U.S. regions, led by a 10% drop in the Midwest, a 9.8% slide in the South. Median home prices reached a new record high. So we have prices continually moving up. We have hardly any inventory out there because everyone's keeping everything off the market. And those people that were going to sell, they're not doing it right now. Why? Why are people holding on to their homes? Because they're worried about their jobs. They're worried that if they move into this other house, they might get laid off. Their job might not be there. The jobs market right now is slowing down. People are looking for jobs. They can't find them. And now it's becoming noticeable. Remember, the economy is what actually happens, not what people think or other people or economists say or what the corporate media says. The economy is what is actually happening. And that's what we talk about. What is actually happening? Now, I wanted to talk about what happened yesterday here. And U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, he came out, and he was out in Davos, that's Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum, and he said something very interesting. He said the weak dollar would be good for U.S. trade prospects. The U.S. dollar plunged to a 3-year low then. And he tried to, walk it back, saying in the short term, it really doesn't matter. And in the long term, don't worry, it'll be very, very strong. Now, everyone was out there saying, the weak dollar. I mean, the U.S. always said there's always going to be a strong dollar. Why all of a sudden a weak dollar? It made no sense. Mnuchin, I don't believe he is part of the Trump administration. I think he's part of the cabal, the central bank system. He was placed there, and this was in the beginning stages when Trump was coming in, and he had to make some concessions on who he was going to put into different positions. And he's a Goldman Sachs boy, and I don't believe that he is going to do anything that helps the U.S. This is why he had to go into the gold vaults to show that there was gold. Remember that? That was a show to make everyone believe, yeah, look, the central bank didn't steal it. The Treasury didn't take it. It's all there. Don't worry about it. This was done on purpose. Now, there are important reasons that it is considered bad form for a sitting U.S. Treasury Secretary or a sitting president to comment on the trading level of the U.S. dollar. Now, Trump didn't make this comment. The U.S. Treasury Secretary did. A cheap dollar is, yes, it's good for U.S. exporters because it makes their products more competitively priced in foreign markets. A cheaper dollar is decidedly not good for U.S. consumers, who have to pay more for imports from foreign countries with stronger currency. I mean, think about it. Go to the apparel department of any department store in the U.S. and try to find an item clothing made in the U.S. And you'll see that most of them, I would say 99% of them, are not. Or go to Lowe's or Home Depot and try to find maybe like a lighting fixture or an electronics store. You're going to find that most of this stuff is not made here. Purchases made by consumers in the U.S. represent approximately 2/3 of total gross domestic product, GDP. A steadily weakening dollar presents a hardship to the everyday person of America, where the bulk of their income goes to the necessities of life. As the dollar weakens, those costs increase whilst wages stagnate, which means you see inflation. You see it takes a lot more dollars to get the same loaf of bread. It takes a lot more dollars to get that TV. It takes a lot more dollars to get anything. And guess what? If this happens, many people won't be able to afford it. And these increased consumer costs lead to rising inflation, which could force the hand of the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates faster than currently anticipated. Now think about that for a second. If the dollar was weakened, everyone would experience inflation. Retail would go down the tubes. Oh yeah, that would just take a nosedive. I mean, you would see stores, online, everything just completely start declining rapidly. What else would happen? Well, the Federal Reserve then would see inflation and they would have to raise rates quickly. Didn't they do this prior to 2008, 2006, 2007, where they were raising rates like crazy? And then all of a sudden the economy came down? What else would happen? Well, it could also cause the stock market to fall, delivering another blow to the working class as their 401k savings for retirement would take a hit. Then there is the matter of the trillions of dollars that foreigners have invested in businesses and real estate in the U.S. If they made those investments when the U.S. dollar was strong and tried to repatriate their funds back to their country by selling the assets, well, they're going to make huge losses. They're going to see huge losses. And the same concept applies to foreign central banks who hold trillions of dollars in U.S. Treasury securities. This was being set up to shut down the economy and to blame it on Trump. That's why this was done. They showed their hand, they made a move, and they tried to push the economy into a collapse. So they can blame who? Trump, his administration. Now, Trump came out and he stopped the whole thing. Trump said, well, Mnuchin's comments was taken out of context and added that our country is becoming so economically strong again and strong in other ways too, and the dollar will get stronger and stronger, and ultimately I want to see a strong dollar. He had to do something to stop it because he knew what was going on. He knew that they were pushing the agenda to shut the economy down. Now, they would then have the narrative of why the economy was coming down because they were going to blame everything that Trump has done so far. Remember, the economy is his. It was already out in the corporate media. The economists already said it's long enough already. He owns the economy. He's already taken responsibility for the stock market. So they figured, let's make the move, and this is exactly what they did. Now, we can see that former central bankers, they are out there saying that the perfect storm is now created, that everything is ready to completely implode on itself. Now, Bill White, who is a professor, who's a veteran central banker, he's saying that the world financial system is dangerously stretched today as it was at the peak of the last bubble. But this time, the authorities are caught in a policy trap with few defenses left. And he went on to say that 9 years of emergency money has had a string of perverse effects and lured emerging markets into debt dependency without addressing the structural causes of the global disorder. All the market indicators right now look very, very similar to what we saw before the Lehman crisis. But the lesson has somehow been forgotten. And he went on to say, and this is coming from Professor White, that evidence of credit degradation is emerging almost daily, and we're seeing it all over the place. He says this has the makings of a perfect storm. He said the global fallout could be violent. Credit in dollars beyond U.S. jurisdiction has risen fivefold in 15 years to over $10 trillion. This is a very big number. As soon as the world gets into trouble, a lot of people are going to have trouble servicing that dollar debt. Borrowers would suffer the double shock of a rising dollar and rising rates, while banks, well, they're going to have their own problems. He's saying that banks now have high capital buffers. The risk has migrated to investment funds concentrated in crowded trades. The share of equities traded in dark pools outside the exchanges has mushroomed to 33%. And we can see right now that we are headed down this path. Now, participants in Davos, global finance executives, they warned of a parallel between today's soaring markets and the froth of the pre-crisis years as they saw back in 2008. Standard & Poor's sums it up well, noting that with interest rates around the globe close to record lows, companies have binged on cheap borrowing. U.S. corporations have a record amount of debt and leverage, with many as vulnerable to default as before the crisis, and yet credit spreads are at record lows. We're in trouble here. One little hiccup or something maybe the Treasury Secretary says could set the entire thing off, and this is what they were trying to do. Now, while the economy is going to be brought down either by Trump administration or by the central bank, and we can see that the central bank is going to bring it down hard, they don't care. They're going to make people suffer. The Trump administration trying to prepare us for this transition, trying to stop what they are doing. And you can see that a lot is going on right now. Meanwhile, Russia, they have a draft law introducing the national cryptocurrency, the crypto ruble, as a means of payment in Russia, and it has been submitted to Parliament. The amendments proposed by the draft law codify the digital financial asset as a legal means of payment on the territory of Russia. The draft law was submitted by MP Riven Kurbanov. It is specified that the currency goes by the name crypto ruble, and Putin ordered the issue of a national cryptocurrency totally regulated by the government. And what we're seeing right now is what we've been talking about. Governments, central banks, they are going to make laws to say this is the cryptocurrency you're going to use. And guess who's going to control it? Already in South Korea, you have to go to a bank to exchange cryptocurrencies. Yes, cryptocurrencies is fantastic. Left alone, it's an incredible, incredible invention. The people control it. It is fantastic. But once central banks get control of it, that's where things fall apart. When governments make laws to say this is the only cryptocurrency, just like they did with the currency of the United States and the currency around the world. Once the central banks get involved, well, that's when things fall apart. Before the central bank, the currencies are great. It's just like a cryptocurrency. But once they make laws and say, okay, we'll create the cryptocurrency, we'll mine it for you, and this is what you have to use, this is where the problem comes in. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for cryptocurrency, but not controlled by the central bank and not by the government. It should be free and open for the people. But again, this is not what they want. We see the yuan, well, it looks like it's going to be open to foreign companies. And right now, the proposal includes relaxation of foreign ownership rules on insurers, securities, and asset management firms and banks. It will also ease restrictions on direct and indirect foreign ownership and fund management and future companies and brokerage firms to 51% from 49%. The limit is expected to be abolished entirely in 3 years. They're taking the next step. They're having foreign companies come into China, and guess what? They're allowing foreign ownership. And we can see they are ready for business. They are ready to pretty much take over this system. And I know a lot of people are saying, no, this is not going to happen. It's just the petro yuan. It's just you. The central bankers, this is what they want. Now, am I saying that it's going to definitely go this way? Hopefully not. Hopefully, the people, hopefully Trump and maybe other leaders, maybe Putin, because he did take control over his private Western central bank. Hopefully they say, you know something? We will control all of this. The people will control all of this. But right now, we can see the central banks, they have a lot of power. They have the power because they have the creation of currency. And it's not just the Fed. It's the IMF, it's the BIZ, it's the ECB, it's the Bank of Japan. They have the control. They have many, many years to get into every single system, to make everyone believe that this is the only way, and brainwashed the world and made government officials very, very wealthy to stop them from getting rid of them. Because all they have to do is make up some type of law or look into these laws and make countering laws to say you don't have to use this currency. But they're not going to do that because they're paid off. They get this free money. Why would they stop this? Because really, what is the benefit of the central bank? Because they manage the economy so well? Why? Because they can create that currency like nobody else can? Come on. We see what's happening here. We are at the end game of this fiat currency system. And the central bankers, they're making their move because they're not going to be blamed for what is happening here. And this is not going to be the only move. There's going to be plenty of others. And this is why we've been telling everyone, get ready, get prepared, because they're going to make another move. And they're going to keep doing it until they get it the way they want it, so they can control the narrative, so they can control what is going on here. To say that, hey, it wasn't us, it was Trump, it was North Korea, it was anyone else, but it wasn't us. So we'll still manage your system. Don't worry about that. And on the other side, we have the Trump administration, who's preparing for a transition, putting everything into place, trying to make it a soft landing so people don't get hurt. I mean, people are going to get hurt, but it's not going to be as bad as the whole thing just collapsing all at once. And right now, this is the main battle. But no matter what happens here, we're headed to the same thing. We're going to go through rough times or really horrific times. So you still need to be prepared. You need to be ready. You need to make sure that you're protected. How do you do that? Well, you could own some cryptocurrencies because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So you can protect yourself with that. I would definitely get gold, silver. If you purchase land, that's actually pretty good. And what you need to do is keep cash within your surroundings, because eventually what's going to happen, they're just going to close down the bank system. You make sure you have food, water, supplies, because in the beginning stages, what's going to happen here is people are not going to know what's happening. And people are going to run to the stores, they're going to try to get whatever they possibly can, and store shelves are going to be completely empty. You're going to need cash on hand because you won't be able to get to the bank. They might put a limit on it. They've done it before. Cyprus. They wanted to do it to Greece, but people ran to the banks because they saw what happened in Cyprus, and they took a lot of their currency out of the banking system, and they were like, oh, okay, we can't do what we did in Cyprus, so that's out of the question. So you need some cash on hand so you can use it in the meantime. And then eventually what's going to happen, the dollar is going to be worth absolutely nothing as inflation hits, hyperinflation hits, and you'll probably have to barter. That's why you need the food, the water. You also need that to survive, toilet paper, medical supplies, and things like that. Eventually, what will happen is we'll go on to a new system. Now, those people holding gold and silver, well, they have an insurance policy because you think gold and silver is going to be worth $1,100, $1,200. No, there's going to be new currency. It's going to be completely reevaluated and revalued. And then they're going to say, okay, gold is now worth 10,000 of these dollars or whatever we have here. And you could trade that in and maybe buy a cryptocurrency. Maybe that will be what you need to do. And if you have cryptocurrency, you might be able to take whatever you have. You have Bitcoin, Dash, or whatever. You might be able to take that and move it into whatever cryptocurrency they say is legal tender. So you can see what is happening here. You can see where we're headed. Get prepared. Get ready, because it's going to be a very bumpy, messy road ahead of us. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.